Pro football was the most popular sport in the nation at the start and the end of the 2010-2019 decade. The National Football League was a vastly different organization 10 years ago. The athletes were bigger, the game was slower, and the crowd was different. The NFL of today is a very different creature. The players are smaller, the games move faster, and the supporters are different. This is our attempt to highlight the most significant changes that have occurred in professional football and the NFL during the past 10 years. Let's start now. First, more aggressive play calling and an end to stadium games. For everyone who cared to listen, the mainstreaming of analytics proved that the NFL's game plan is excessively conservative. On-field buy-in is still modest, but some coaches and clubs are unquestionably becoming more aggressive. Since the beginning of the decade, fourth down attempts have increased by 55%, and two-point conversion tries have increased by 569% during the first 3 quarters of games when game scenarios are still variable. Some coaches elect to go for 2 rather than wait until later when there would be less time to make up for a missed shot when their team is down by 8 points in the fourth quarter. Even while analytics go beyond fourth downs and two-point conversions, it has most obviously improved the drama and intrigue of games. During the decade, 5 teams shifted into brand new stadiums. In 2020, 3 more will do so, and that will basically bring to a close a period of contentious negotiations across the nation that resulted in the delivery of billions of dollars in public funds and assisted in increasing league earnings from roughly $8.5 billion to almost $17 billion annually. The NFL was forced to pay in on its most valuable bargaining chip, Los Angeles, after 3 stalwart cities, St. Louis, San Diego, and Oakland, California, withdrew from the league. There are no immediate concerns about relocation, outside of London's logistical difficulties, with the Raiders relocating to Allegiant Stadium in Las Vegas and the Raiders, Chargers, and Rams moving to SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles. As former NFL executive Eric Grubman put it in 2017, if you build a house, it's not like you never ever do anything to the house for the next 30 years. This applies to stadium decisions. However, the frenzy is over, at least for a bit. Next, overhauling special teams and a late-decade changing of the guard at QB. The kicking game was changed by 2 rule changes. First off, the ratio of touchbacks to returns nearly reversed in 2011 when the kickoff line moved from the 30-yard line to the 35-yard line. The percentage of touchbacks increased from 16.4% in 2010 to 60.9% in 2019, reducing an exhilarating but extremely risky play. In 2018, changes to the coverage regulations undoubtedly made the kickoff safer and kept the play from being completely scrapped, but they weren't sufficient to encourage more returns. Second, the 2015 shift of extra points back to the 15-yard line reduced the automaticity of the point after and encouraged a rise in two-point attempts. In 2019, PAT conversion rates dropped from 99.3% in 2014 to 93.9%. In 2010, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Matt Ryan, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, Phillip Rivers, and Eli Manning were among the top 15 quarterbacks in the NFL, according to Total Quarterback Rating, QBR. Eli Manning retired after the 2019 season, while Peyton Manning did so in 2015. The remainder are still going strong, but a new wave has largely supplanted them. The only players from 2010 group to place in the top 15 in QBR this season are Brees and Ryan. Lamar Jackson, the 2019 MVP, Patrick Mahomes, the 2018 MVP from the Super Bowl 54, and many other talented players have taken their places. Furthermore, the fact that 5 of the top 7 QBR players this season, Jackson, Mahomes, Dak Prescott, Deshaun Watson, and Russell Wilson, are black should come as no surprise to anyone. This is more than twice as many as there were in 2010, Michael Vick and Josh Freeman, and it shows that the NFL has moved past one of its darkest chapters. Moving on, more football, but less practice. Despite the long list of unsuccessful predecessors over the past 50 years, other football leagues are now more determined than ever to profit from the NFL's popularity. The Fall Experimental Football League, FXFL, the United Football League, UFL, and the Alliance of American Football, AAF, all failed in the 2010s alone. The FXFL folded before the end of its first season. The FXFL, however, changed its name to the Spring League as the decade came to an end, and WWE owner Vince McMahon invested $200 million to revive the XFL, which began play in February 2020. The coronavirus epidemic caused the XFL to suspend operations midway through its inaugural season. On April 13th, it filed for bankruptcy, and it is currently for sale. Football is without a doubt the most popular sport in the nation, but it is highly doubtful that any entity save the NFL and the NCAA will be able to profit from it. The intensity and quantity of off-season training and in-season practice were drastically reduced by the 2011 Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA. Teams are only allowed to ask players to attend one 3-day minicamp during their 9-week off-season program. The number of on-field off-season sessions is capped at 10, and conventional training camp practices of 2 per day they are not permitted. Teams are limited to 14 full pad practices every season. The independence is adored by players, and they readily accept responsibility for their own conditioning. Coaches contend that they don't have enough time to develop quarterbacks and offensive linemen in particular, or to teach fundamentals. That opinion hasn't stopped the growing practice of holding veteran players out of preseason games, which will probably result in fewer preseason games when owners exercise their option to increase the regular season to 17 games, if not earlier. The summer training camp now has more restrictions thanks to the 2020 CBA. There is a cap of 16 padded practices per team. At the beginning of camp, they must also undertake a 5-day acclimatization session. The maximum time allotted for practice is 2.5 hours, while the maximum time allotted for playing time per day is 4 hours. Next up, offenses mimicking college and ubiquitous player tracking. Given the limited amount of practice time they would have to devote to preparing young players for conventional pro schemes, NFL coaches are adapting the spread concepts that have dominated high school and college football. As a result, shotgun snaps increased from 56% of all plays at the start of the decade to 79% at its conclusion. Running backs' rushing yards have decreased by 13%, but quarterbacks' rushing yards have increased by 36% as a result. There are 6% fewer yards downfield covered by the average pass. Due in part to a 17% increase in running back receptions, the completion rate increased from 60.5% to 64%. NFL franchises started utilizing GPS technology early in the decade to give health statistics and injury prevention during practice, similar to other professional sports teams around the world. The NFL Players Association provides players with a customized biometric monitor. Radio frequency identification (RFID) chips were installed into each player's shoulder pads by the NFL in 2014. The game balls had chips added to them in 2016. Speed, distance, and other data points are measured throughout the entire procedure. NFL Next-Gen metrics, as they are now known, are still being figured out by teams, but they provide analysts new methods to depict plays, tell stories, and analyze games while also demystifying the game. Finally, the onset of the streaming era and more productive concussion conversation. With a 5-year Super Bowl window in mind, we made every NFL player a free agent and then asked our 32 NFL Nation writers to redraft 4 rounds of high-impact talents. Who is the superior team? The NFL has become a dominant broadcast program, but a late-decade rating decline happened at the same time as a preliminary investigation into online game distribution. With a separate announcer team, the league has broadcast games on Yahoo, Twitter, and most recently Amazon Prime. Streaming numbers are still tiny but growing, while television ratings have largely recovered. The real question is whether or not the NFL will choose to give exclusive rights to a business that will solely distribute games online anytime soon. After the 2022 season, the league's broadcast contracts expire, which will probably be a deciding factor in any decision regarding exclusive streaming. By the end of the decade at least, the public debate on football and concussions had become more fruitful. When Concussion had its theatrical debut in 2015, it showed how vigorously the NFL had worked to allay concerns about brain trauma in football during the 1990s and 2000s. The difficult 2013 concussion settlement, which is still pending, added to the negative evidence. There has been a noticeable change in tenor since then. By 2017, there had been 291 documented concussions since the NFL started reporting annual concussion data in 2012. The league issued a call to action and appointed Dr. Alan Sills as its chief medical officer on a full-time basis. It reinforced in-game protocols to include injury timeouts and independent neurotrauma consultants at every game, working with the NFLPA to raise standards for certified helmets, and applied bioengineering to inform rule revisions. Nobody is certain that football can shield brains from science, let alone the NFL. However, the league's efforts are more apparent, and the environment is more favorable for finding solutions. Unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we had for today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Till next time, cheers!